All right, our colleagues there from our sister station in Uganda, NTV Uganda, monitoring the situation with regards to what is happening on the election day. Well, a very good afternoon to you and welcome to NTV at 1 here in Kenya on a day that Kenya's largest trading partner and neighbor is deciding her future. Well, voting is underway across Uganda under heavy security in an unprecedented election. Well, the internet and social media platforms have been switched off at this moment and voters allowed into polling stations under very strict guidelines coming on the back of chaotic campaigns, rights abuses, internet and social media shutdown, like I said, and these are some of the early pictures of voting and security operations in the East African nation. Now, polls were due to open at about 7 p.m. They did, local time in Uganda. There was a bit of delay in some of the several areas, according to reports we were able to receive. Some polling stations did not open for close to 2 hours, and the voters in the queue had grown quite anxious, began shouting at the polling gate officials. But then again, that was calmed down, and polls are actually expected to close at exactly 4 p.m. but will remain open until everyone in the queue at time of closing has managed to vote. Our reporters from Uganda are still monitoring the situation, and results are not expected before Saturday. And you can remember that from the day before yesterday, Ugandan police had promised that they would deploy officers on rooftops of the capital, Kampala, on this day, which they say comes after opposition activists commanded protests from rooftops in November when more than 50 people were killed after Bobi Wine, one of the presidential candidate, Robert Chagulanyi, was arrested. And earlier this week, in a televised address, Yoweri Museveni, the incumbent president, gave a very stark warning, saying that no one should disturb peace, and if there's any kind of chaotic scenes, then everyone will have themselves to blame. And he's actually ordered the security forces to ensure that the law has been followed to the latter, and that's why security forces have been cracking down on gatherings ahead of this day, the election day. And we've seen a number of people injured in some of the chaotic scenes that we witnessed during the campaign period. The government says the ban on gatherings was to prevent the spread of coronavirus, while the opposition says it was just a smokescreen for repression. This is some of the issues we'll probably be discussing. Well, this is a very tense presidential election, and indeed it is pitting longtime President Yoweri Museveni against the opposition frontrunner Bobi Wine. Bobi Wine is a pop star turned opposition leader. And just taking a look back at the campaign period in the run-up to today's vote, this was plagued by probably the worst political violence in years, with more than, with a lot of people injured in the process, as well as the repeated intimidation and arrest of opposition figures. And remember, police actually say that the actions are necessary to ensure compliance to COVID-19 restrictions. But the worst of what is happening, and a lot of concern, is the internet access that has been cut off, and there are fears of unrest by security forces who are trying to implement some of those measures by the government. Well, away from those concerns, the people of Uganda have been reacting to that issue of internet and social media shutdown in the country. Let's just listen into their thoughts.
The only sad thing about on the other side is that we are missing the communication, because some lines have been cut off. We don't have internet, so we are lacking communication outside Kampala. We don't know what's going on.
This is the day we've been waiting for the new Uganda, as our prince proposed it. So we are very excited to see what is going on.
Well, the opposition presidential candidate Robert Chagulanyi had actually voted a couple of hours ago, I believe, at the Magere polling center. That is near Kampala. That's his home and where he was registered as a voter. He did speak there, and this is what he had to say.
We also how the regime tried to bring up issues to do with my education and my age to block me from standing for presidency. And indeed, I was arrested on the day of nomination. we went for the campaign. Also the efforts to block me from reaching out to the people. We reached out to the people either way. And now we are here. Everybody was scared. They thought I would not cast my vote. Here I am, coming from the polling station. So, having survived and overcome and surmounted all these challenges and odds, I want to assure Ugandans that we can and indeed will win. Whether or not Mr. Ryabakama declares that is his business. Our business is winning. We have made every effort to observe and watch this election, and we will know the answer.
Remarks there by Robert Chagulanyi speaking to our sister station after casting his ballot, saying the tribulations he had to encounter during this campaign period up to this day, and just also taking a look at some of the other pending and other related issues on the election. We have here Yoweri Museveni, who had also casted his vote. And it says, you know, we're at Karo Primary School. That's where the polling station is in Nshwere, where President Kaguta Museveni casted his vote. Next to it is Nshwere COU polling station, where 250 voters are set to cast their votes amidst the normal presidential deployment. And just taking a look at some of the other related issues that and how the other international media organizations are covering the elections in Uganda. At Al Jazeera here talks about Uganda voting intense presidential election, and here you have it, a picture of Robert Chagulanyi, Bobi Wine there, saying voting is underway in Uganda. It's a tense presidential election pitting longtime President Yoweri Museveni against opposition frontrunner Bobi Wine, saying this vote was plagued by the worst political violence in years, with more than 50 people killed by security forces amid crackdowns on opposition rallies. Also talking about the internet access which has been cut off, and that there are fears of unrest as security forces try to stop supporters of leading opposition challenger Bobi Wine from monitoring polling stations. We also have here CNN saying if he wins Uganda election, Museveni will work with his 7th U.S. president. Here's how the U.S. has helped him stay in power. And during a virtual live press conference on Thursday, a stunned global audience watched as singer-turned-politician Bobi Wine was forcibly removed from his vehicle by Ugandan police as gunshots were fired. And also taking a look at, following the incident, the conference organizers, Vanguard Africa, a non-profit promoting democracy in African countries, filed a complaint with the International Criminal Court against Museveni and other high-ranking Ugandan officials for violations of international law governing human rights and crimes against humanity. And away from that, also Reuters here, also taking a look at how the internet blackout has affected the election process there, and saying, you know, Uganda's communications regulator ordered telecoms operators in the country to suspend all internet gateways from Wednesday evening until further notice. And the blackout came on the eve of the presidential election in which longtime leader Yoweri Museveni is facing an opposition galvanized by popular singer Bobi Wine, despite a campaign marked by brutal crackdowns. Well, from that, we also have here CGTN saying the United Chief calls for inclusive, transparent, peaceful elections in Uganda. And so the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Wednesday issued a call for an inclusive, transparent and peaceful election process across Uganda a day ahead of opening of the polls. And with presidential and parliamentary elections scheduled to take place today, and of course they're happening right now, the UN chief has actually raised concern over reports of violence and tension in the parts of the country and implored all the political actors and their supporters to, quote-unquote, refrain from the use of hate speech, intimidation and violence. Further, the UN chief has also called on the Ugandan authorities, particularly the security forces, to show maximum restraint during this period and act according to established human rights principles. And he also reiterated that the UN's commitment to support the country's efforts to promote sustainable development and build a prosperous future. And these are just some of the news reports coming from international media organizations that are also very closely